Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to jump right in, and I would love to start with little Hitha. Tell me about her. What was she like, and what did she dream about?
Little Hitha knew who she was, and I find myself revisiting and sitting back down with her because she was fearless and bold and creative and so confident in herself that I think a lot about how adulthood and the experiences we live, of course, shape us for who we are, but we can't forget who we've always been. So, little Hitha, my younger self, was bold. And that was both out of, I think, my innate personality and out of necessity. We moved around a lot when I was growing up. I think with my dad coming to the United States, as an immigrant with an accent, even though he had a PhD and was incredibly qualified, he'd hit the ceiling of a company where his advancement really wasn't attainable with internally. And so would look to advance usually at a new role at a new company. So we moved around a lot because of that. It was something I loved. I really loved jumping into a new experience, a new place, a new culture, and understand like learning and getting to know people. Wasn't until I was an adult that I realized I am very much a social introvert, but I genuinely do love meeting new people, getting to know them, understanding what life is like in different places. So that boldness was both who I think I always am, very much modeled by my mother as well, but also from circumstance. I think a lot about this one thing my mother did when I was a kid. You get asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, as a child of Indian immigrants, what was presented to us was a pretty narrow group of options. It was doctor, engineer, maybe lawyer. And my mother definitely encouraged the doctor part of things, but she also allowed me to dream big. So I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be a boss lady, which I think I just meant I wanted to wear like really impressive looking suits and have a fancy office. I wanted to be Mr. T from the A Team because I really liked all of his jewelry and his sweet van. And I was like, accessories and a sweet ride. Yes, that sounds awesome. And my mother always appended that, any of my wildest dreams, with a and a doctor. And I think that's very important because never once did she dismiss my big dreams, my very different dreams, and that and introduced me to me the sense of possibility that I didn't have to choose, that I'd have to work hard and I'd have to figure it out, but that it was always a possibility. And I think so much of Little Hitha, who I am the way I am, who I was back then, is because of the possibility of that and I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for my mother for doing. I ask her about it often, actually, is did she understand what she was doing? And she goes, at first, no. I just was a way for you to accept medicine as an option. But later, I did intentionally repeat it to let you know that you could choose to be whatever you wanted to be. And I saw my mother evolve in her career a number of times. Again, we moved around a lot. So for her, even though her career was important, it really was adapted after my father's career. So I saw her work at a telecom company in an office, dressed up in fancy work clothes, working a full day. And, I got dropped off at school at the the early school program, and I got picked up from after school. I saw her build and run a travel agency out of our home and helped her work that travel agency, but for an hour or two before I went to bed growing up as a kid. I've seen her run full offices of different kinds of businesses and manage that. And I've seen her, oh my God, she was a choreographer for some of our dance performances. Truly, my mother is a big reason why I'm also a multi-hyphenate because she showed me it is possible to do different things, to try different things, and how to close chapters when something is no longer a fit, either from circumstance or by choice. And, you know, I'm just very lucky to have the best role models in the world who nurtured my curiosity, but who also modeled possibility.
That is so beautiful and is resonating with me so, so much. In what you shared, you talk about how you've traveled so much while growing up. How did those early lessons in efficient packing, as you say, translate to your insights about helping women create space in their lives for what truly matters to them?
I mean, I never set out to be a packing expert. I'd say the packing life found me. It really did start in 2009 when I first started working with my father. And I moved back home, not because I couldn't, afford an apartment or whatnot. I was on the road almost every single week, and it made no sense for me to have an apartment that I would barely be at in an exorbitantly expensive city. So, living at home worked for me, but it also meant I had to figure out how to manage work trips where there might be multiple destinations before I came home and very different types of work trips. Pitching to an investor or potential partner and then touring a manufacturing facility are two very different types of wardrobes, etc. And I traveled largely with men. So they were already throwing their items into a small suitcase or sometimes even a backpack. So options and having too many choices and waiting for luggage just really wasn't an option. So it wasn't until I started actually writing about this part of things before Hitha on the Go, my old blog, was a blatant attempt at being like all the other blogs I read. So it was a little bit of fashion, a little bit of food. I look back in some of those outfits and I am just like, why? I look at my over decorated apartment and I'm like, why? I look at some of those early pictures and I'm just like, why? And I'm grateful for it because it shows how much you grow. And I'm grateful that there is a record of all of those things. Because again, I'm very grateful for that younger Hitha and everything she did to find her way there. So it wasn't until I started writing about how I was packing and what I was packing and how I was managing like a very travel heavy work life and that I was writing for how people typically pack and travel. Back then, most of the content on the internet was quit your job and sell most of your possessions and live out of a backpack. That really wasn't applicable to the majority of people and how they pack and travel. So I stumbled into a niche that there was an unmet need. And when I realized how well that was resonating, and certainly these were the early days of Pinterest where virality was very possible, I took advantage of it and I tripled down on it. And, you know, hacking focusing on this vertical allowed for an incredible amount of opportunities that have helped me build my personal brand since. It helped me with doing video demonstrations and video projects for major companies like About.com and Meredith Media. It allowed for me to work with brands on quarterly subscription boxes and product collaborations. And yeah, it led to a book opportunity and writing my first book with a major publisher. And to think that none of these things may have been possible had it not been for writing, putting together a little graphic of 10 essentials I use for long flights with also very clear whys behind this product and how I use it. I'm very grateful that that one post taught me how to storytell, taught me how to scale and take advantage of opportunities and market well, how to expand and seek out different kinds of business opportunities, and to also know when a business opportunity isn't going to be the right fit for me. And that then went into after How to Pack came out, I was really tired of talking about packing. Like I was like, can I not be packing girl anymore?
You're like,
My
I'm over
approach
it, but I love it. But what's
exactly.
next?
It then went into, well, brought this sensibility of ease and applicability and not wasting people time, like efficiency, to packing, what are some of the other pain points women have, especially my peers, millennial women who are juggling career and family and personal development that I can bring to the table. And so at that point, Hitha on the Go started expanding a little bit more into fashion, but outfits you could actually wear, not like outfits not like costume for a fashion blog outfits, into really simple, easy recipes that I was making often in books that I was reading and really enjoying. So it came with a sense of pre-vettedness. And then in tapping into my own network and interviewing my friends about the tools, the practices that helped them live their best, fullest lives as well. So that really became the thesis and the mission of Hitha on the Go. And to be honest, if it hadn't been stepping into a CEO role for Rhoshan Pharma and not being able to produce that content at that same quality, I'd still be running it. But I'm grateful it exists on the internet. It's a beautiful archive of a near decade of work.
Oh, I'm so grateful for it too. I had a blog when I first started my aerospace engineering degree and was looking to live fully into my mind, body, and soul, as I called it. And it was called The Balancing Act. My mom came up with the name. And you're absolutely right. It was that era of posting what you were wearing, what you were eating, where you were traveling to. And I used to write about all these travel pieces, and I source inspiration from these incredible women around me about what helped them take care of themselves. And it's since evolved to this podcast, but the the seeds we plant are so important, and watching it bloom is really so special. So I am so excited to read more of this blog. In the beautiful blog you created, there's this segment called My Best Advice, where, as you shared, you sourced your friends to and your network to really talk about the best advice that they would give on the topic of living fully into who you are and living your best life most efficiently and just making time for what matters. If you could go back in time, what essential advice would you give to yourself on being a first-time author writing How to Pack?
Um, I have to talk a little bit about how to pack came to be because I am an incredibly lucky author in that how to pack came to be rarely happens for one author once, let alone twice, which is how I've received both of my book deals. So the day I came home from the hospital with my first son, Ro, I get this email from an editor at Penguin Random House for Clarkson Potter, an imprint at Penguin Random House, who said, I love your blog. We're really interested in doing a packing book. Would you be interested in writing a packing book? And me, I am like, is this the drugs? Like, am I hallucinating this? Is this for real? And like, I showed it to my husband, I showed it to my mom. I'm holding like my 3-day-old child. And my husband goes like, look at half the books on our bookshelf right now. They're Clarkson Potter books. Like, you need to go take this meeting. So I like had my week-old son in his car seat after his very first well check at Le Pen Quotidien in just south of Central Park, meeting this editor who said, we're all really excited about this. Like, you should be receiving an offer letter. And I'm just like, huh? Huh? Um, and so I skipped the formal process of putting together a proposal and jumped straight into writing this book. I wrote a terrible first draft that I completely threw away. And my agent, bless her heart, like, not in that Southern cheeky way, like truly, like, my agent is an angel from heaven. And now one of my dear friends, she basically put her life on pause for 4 weeks. And we sat in Noya House in one of the back booths and wrote this book in a very short period of time, gleaning from the blog, but also how she asked me questions, how she elucidated certain stories from me, and taught me actually how to write a book versus how to write a blog post. So if I were to go back and do it again, I would have written a proposal just to get my thoughts on page properly. And I would do the same for We're Speaking as well. The beauty of We're Speaking is that I knew how to at least write a book, the mechanics of writing a book. And I had a history degree that taught me how to research and cite sources. And I had an incredible assistant, editorial assistant named Tabor, who had been really taking on the lead of running Five Smart Reads, who came in and really managed the research and a lot of the tactical parts of writing a book for me that I couldn't have done it without her. So what I would tell old Hitha is just because you got it here doesn't mean you should skip the work that most people do to write a successful book. And so that is how I would do things differently if I were to. And now that I think about what my next book is, which I don't know what it is, so like nothing fun to announce here. But as I think about it, this is, as Kim tells me, this is finally a Hitha book. This isn't what Hitha is writing for somebody else to fit an editorial calendar. This is, what do you want to write? What story do you want to tell? And that is quite intimidating, but it's also forcing me to fall in love with writing again for myself versus writing as a career. And that's been fun to just get back into that world a bit.
Oh, that's really special. And oh, what a celebration of just and what a bloom of flowers. That is just so incredible. As you've continued to write, you've written so beautifully, vulnerably, and is such a gift about experiencing a spectacular burnout last spring that led you to step away from much of your work and some relationships. What did you discover when you really began untangling your self-worth from your net worth, in your own words? And how did you go about it with all of this incredible knowledge you have on personal development and having this new iteration of really choosing yourself?
I'm still working on it. And what I actually have learned over the past almost year now is I will always be working on it. That because of society's very American culture of capitalism, it is going to be an ongoing, both offensive and defensive process. And I'm gonna have to be dealing with this for a long time. So I no longer beat myself up that I'm not quote unquote over it because I know there is no fully getting over it. It's figuring out how to stay really strong in my own sense of self and purpose. And that the tactical parts of, I know I'm important, I know I am valued, I know my work is solid, irrespective of how much money it makes, that I think I will always have to be doing exercises to keep that separation. I will say, as part of my multi-hyphenate journey, I really needed that massive burnout that I hit because it's taught me how to close chapters in a way with intention versus kind of ghosting them, if you will, or letting it fade away. And so I thought I was going to step away from Five Smart Reads and I would close that chapter. And what I realized when I tried to is I actually did miss writing about the news, curating the news. It went from, though, it being like a very quick digest to wanting to talk more thoughtfully about a handful of issues and go into greater detail. So the weekly Five Smart Reads looks very different from the very first Insta story I ever shared, with more thoughtful commentary, more sharing of my opinions versus just here's the Cliff's notes, which, oh my God, I feel like I should be saying here's the Chat GPT summary versus Cliff's notes because I'm aging myself now, um, of an article. And that to do it less, but with greater intention and purpose, it works for me now and it serves me now. It had me fully step away from sponsor content. Even though this was a profitable and growingly profitable business, spending that much time on social media and trying to create content for the algorithm versus creating content for myself, whew, I'm still working on that, but that is a chapter I've closed with a lot of gratitude and a lot of happiness. I'm so glad I had that professional and personal experience. And I am so glad I am no longer doing it. And that's one area that I think I needed these experiences in order to share what a multi-hyphenate life looks like and what a fulfilling life looks like. Because what mattered to you in your 20s, what mattered to you in your 30s, even what mattered to you a year ago, it's going to change. And I think we don't allow ourselves the space to embrace the change or celebrate that change, or to close chapters with gratitude and happiness and on positive notes, not necessarily because we were forced to. And I think once we learn how to do that, we can continue to focus on living a life of fulfillment versus internal fulfillment and purpose versus what is externally validated. And I'm still working on disassociating myself from external validation. I think it is hard to, in running a company where I have shareholders and investors who I am beholden to professionally. That is where external validation, I need to keep it very focused. So I need to find areas of my life where it really is for myself and for my own internal validation. So disassociating a lot of those numbers, growth goals, or financial goals or metrics for my Substack, and keeping it to, I love what I'm writing, from doing the same with new passion projects like a fun podcast I started with a friend of mine. And also carving out time every day. Like, my therapist kind of read me the riot act yesterday, and she said, I'm going to keep you on this call, on this Zoom, until you have told me what you are dropping. Doesn't have to be forever, but something's got to give now, because you can't you can't keep doing it, but you need some accountability. And I'm like, I know. And so I will say, I don't even remember the original question, but yes, closing chapters, burnout. I think we have to remember that there are going to be moments where burnout is inevitable. We live in a very chaotic, noisy time where more is being expected of us with lesser payouts. So there has to be a proactive, intentional way of taking care of yourself, not just in the general physical or financial ways of, living beyond your means and saving more than you're making sure you're not spending more than what you're earning, to meditate and sleep and eat well and move your body a bit, to nurturing your friendships. That in and of itself is enough. It can be too much to even just do that. So I want everyone to give themselves a lot of grace in knowing it's never going to look perfect 100% of the time. There are going to be times where you can only focus on one physical health thing, one financial health thing, and one social thing. So whether it's at this point, I got to prioritize family over time with my friends for now. Right now, I only have capacity to focus on sleep, and I kind of got to let my typical goals or how I would like to be eating or exercising let go for now, ease up. And so rather than trying to be perfect 100% of the time and for consistency to look perfect, allow yourself to give yourself permission to pick and choose based on where you're at in this moment, and know it's never forever or permanent.
Yeah, and there's beauty in that impermanence too, and knowing that those allocations won't don't ever have to be locked in that way, but you can shift it around. And that's such a beautiful perspective on burnout. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, how has your practice of writing then evolved over time and as a tool that makes space for what you truly love? You shared how you get to write about what Hitha really wants. What has that journey looked like of, from maybe your first time writing to this exciting adventure you get to embark on now?
Mhm. I mean, it's fun to kind of write without an editorial calendar or a specific format in mind. I'm having fun exploring again in a way that before I was very much beholden to an editorial calendar. that now I'm vibing. It's how I am on social. It's how I am writing. Because that keeps it fun for me because I needed to give myself, and I'm still in this. I want to fall in love with something that used to be a passion that became a job, that I want it to become a passion again. I intend for it to become a passion because my day job and being a mom and a wife and a daughter who's very involved with one, I'm obsessed with my parents. I think we can understand that. But as they're aging, they also, I want to be involved and I want to help take care of them the way they've taken care of me. That for right now are my two biggest priorities is delivering and keeping Roshan Pharma running and operating and hitting our goals and milestones and managing our partnerships and being the best mom, wife, and daughter I possibly can be, which means I love my friends. I'm not as social as I normally am. And it's more phone calls and text catch ups than it is in person gatherings. It means that content is not a business right now. It's a joy, it's a pleasure, which means I give myself permission to skip weeks where I don't write and I don't produce content. And I give myself permission if I feel a certain format of the newsletter is just not hitting, let's try something else. And that feels fun again. So I've fallen in love with writing again. Something I also picked back up last summer is journaling. I had intended to go through the artist's way over the summer. I never made it past morning pages, but I've stuck with morning pages. And like, it's the first time in my life I've actually finished a notebook. I've like finished four of these. I'm like halfway through my fifth. And I have to tell you, there's something incredibly satisfying about filling a notebook. And this is a practice that I genuinely look forward to doing every single day. And it's one that I see incredible benefits. When I do it, I am more present, I am more clear headed, and I genuinely can show up as the best CEO, mom, wife, daughter that I want to. It helps me show up as a version of myself I want to be, not who I feel resigned to be based on not sleeping well or scrolling on my phone first thing in the morning, etc. It helps me be proactive in taking care of myself versus fixing from a reactive, exhausted, not so great space.
I love the term who I've resigned to be. I think we get to um, make the choice, and the choices really shape who we're resigning to be and the circumstances. And I think that phrase is so powerful. So thank you so much. Um, Something that we just spoke about in terms of celebration and celebrating the end of a chapter, but also the the gratitude we had for that chapter, everything that it brought us. Um, you had written about ambition so beautifully, and in it, you'd said that this, we're often in this pattern of um, achieving something really big for ourselves and then moving on to the next thing. And, how do we really slow down and bask in the celebration of what we've created? If you had to write a blog post on celebration and savoring what we've created, what would really be on it? What would be your recipe to celebrate yourself? The big and the small wins. I think that's so important for multi-hyphenates to really um, acknowledge everything that they're holding. And you've spoken to it all so beautifully. But if you had to really take a moment and perhaps even write about it, what would be your recipe to just really like soak it all in?
Few things kind of come to mind in terms of experiences that forced me to be more celebrate, to pause and celebrate versus just jump to the next one. One is, in running Roshan Pharma with my father, and at the time where he was, much more involved in the day-to-day of the company, every time we hit some sort of milestone or an accomplishment, like we successfully manufactured a batch at a new a contract manufacturing organization. We had a successful meeting with the FDA. We got data from a clinical study and it looked good. He would stop, we would get a bottle of champagne, and we would celebrate. And we did that throughout. So even when we got term sheets we knew we would not accept, we stopped and we celebrated, because to get to that moment was a whole lot of hard work. And if we didn't acknowledge that that work had been externally validated by some point and forced us to say, this is actually a big deal and we need to recognize it as such, I would have just jumped to the next. And I would have beat myself up that it wasn't the deal terms I wanted, or it wasn't the partner I wanted, or this collaboration would have not been good for our team. I would have just been focused on the negatives. I wouldn't have ever been focused on the positives. And so it's something I'm still not great at on my own. I really do lean on my circle to help me pause to celebrate these things. But I will say, my niece lives with us. She's 25 years old. She forces me to stop and celebrate a lot of the time too. She will like stop and say, Akka, this is a huge deal. Like, why are we not like, let me make you pasta. Let's like watch, we have like our favorite cheesy movies. She's like, we're going to watch a cheesy movie and I'm going to go get a cupcake. And she forces me to stop and celebrate. And actually, that's something I'm very grateful, and what I'm learning from the Gen Z and Gen Alpha is they have they've had the opportunity to grow up in a time where the possibilities of what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do and how they wanted to live are much wider than what we were raised with. They grew up with a certain level of comfort in being Indian or other in a very Western world, having those differences celebrated at a very young age, and therefore with the level of confidence and calm that I don't think millennials or Gen Xers, who were the first generation raised in the States, grew up with. I think we had quite a bit of pressure of not disappointing our parents and then feeling like we needed to overperform because we saw the sacrifice they went through in choosing a new country to settle down in and to build a life in for us. For us. So I am not good at doing it by myself. So if I were to write a Substack about it, I would actually interview my dad and I would actually interview Vibha on how they view it as a way to remind me to do it myself. But I'm really following, I'm reacting to them. So I would actually like ping the people in my network who do force me to stop to celebrate.
That is so wonderful. And I would really look forward to reading that if you wrote it. I think that would be just such a gorgeous piece of writing.
Thank you. Now
You,
that you asked for it, I will prioritize it.
I think it would just be I think it would be a wonderful exploration and just to hear what they say, and especially I think coming from those sources, I think it would be particularly meaningful and just something that you can look back on whenever there's just like a particularly challenging moment that you're supposed to extract lessons from, but it's just really hard.
It is really
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. You now explore joy, resistance in romance novels on your new podcast with Laura. If you were to author a romance novel, what themes or character dynamics would you explore that really reflect your own journey with ambition, vulnerability, and finding joy in unexpected places?
I mean, I'm careful to say never, but I will say I don't ever see myself writing a romance novel simply because it is the one thing in my life that brings me so much joy that I think writing it would make it turn into work and it would take the joy away from me. I would love to write fiction. There's some children's fiction I would like to write. I'd love to maybe write a thriller. But romance is like my happy spot that I indulge in for myself. So what I would say is I'd reframe this question to I would curate a romance anthology and I would tap women of color largely to completely to write this, or diverse women. So I would love to have some LGBTQIA perspectives in here as well. And it would be to in this with ambition as the lens, like a short story centered on being loved for your multitudes and not in spite of them, with with the main character being ambitious on their own terms. Because I think it's important to expand our view of ambition from a very sort of corporate or external validation centered on what success typically is determined as, and recognize that ambition looks very different for every single person. So the reclaiming of ambition on a personal note is, I think, something, and defining it for yourself is something I would want to be celebrated and explored in this anthology. I do love some tropes though. Like I love an enemies to lovers where he's actually fallen first and is
Mhm.
like quietly simping for the girl, but doesn't know how to like tell her he's in love with her. I love a second chance. I really love I've gotten into a little bit more friends to lovers and seeing how a relationship can really grow and evolve from such a beautiful foundation. And I do like love a little love at first sight. I mean, when I met my husband, he and I both say that like by the end of the weekend, we both kind of knew that that was it for each of us. So I'm a little partial to that trip for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, I would so look forward to reading the anthology. I think that would just like fly off the shelves and really make women and gender minorities feel like that line from Nobody Wants This, where Kristen Bell's just expressing her monologue, and it just like really resonated with so many people who, um, yeah, who in their success, it's being expansive and creating, but it's been challenging to be seen and loved and heard for it all. And um, I think that was such a beautiful example
When Adam
of
Brody
that.
said, I can handle you, the
Yes.
way that just healed a generation
Yes.
of overachieving millennial women, a lot of us eldest daughters were
Hmm.
just like, oh my God. And I mean, I'll speak about this from my own lens. My husband is that guy, like truly. He is someone just this past week. He said what my therapist told me the day before, and I didn't want to hear it. And I was a little snippy with him. And he just gave me the space and said, I love you to do it. And so yesterday after my session, and I came back to him and I go, you were right. He's like, I love you. There was no, I told you so. There was none of that. There just was like, maybe you couldn't hear it right then. And I'm very grateful for that because he has shown me he's just basically like reframed everything I'd been told about relationships is you have to adapt yourself, don't be too picky, etc., to having a partner in the truest sense of the word, someone who is as ambitious and cares so much about my goals as much as he cares about his, and it's vice versa too. So to have someone who actively celebrates me and champions me in equal measure of me doing it for him, it's been I don't think I could have done everything I've done, and I could not be the multi-hyphenate I am without him, in addition to my parents and my sons who teach me every single day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel a tear. That makes me just so happy. You're a multi-hyphenate CEO.
Yeah,
How has embracing every part of who you are shaped your approach to leadership and the way that you structure your relationship with work as a facet of life?
it's hasn't been easy and has certainly evolved. So the CEO I was coming into this role almost 10 years ago versus the CEO I am today are two very different people. I did not have a whole lot of humility when I first entered my role. I thought I knew. I did not come to the role with as much curiosity and a willingness to learn. I think I came in with a bit of, oh, I know how to do this. And I did not offer a level of respect to some of my team members that I should have. And so, course correcting and reframing my approach to leading a team and managing a team, many members of which who've been doing their jobs longer than I have, has helped me become, I think, a much calmer and a much better leader. So I know my job as CEO is to make sure the project's moving forward as it can, knowing where to push when things can be pushed, knowing when to ease up for things to be de-risked and to ensure they are done correctly and to give us the best chance at successful outcomes. It's to manage relationships. So my job is not to do in the product development. My job is not to, thank goodness, my job is not to do from like a tactical operations perspective. I have the world's best team, and everybody is the absolute best at what they do. So really my job is to make sure they have what they need. I'm looped in to know how things are moving. I chat with them about things they might need additional support on or things that could go wrong. So we can just be aware and scenario plan at a high level, and I get out of their way when it comes to the actual doing of things. My job is to manage relationships as well with external stakeholders, so with our development partner and with our investors, and make sure they are feeling good and confident in how things are progressing. And that's the job. My job is not to do as a CEO as much as it is to lead and to guide and to make sure everyone has they need what they need. And I will say motherhood has taught me a lot about being a CEO, because so much of what I've learned in, especially as my kids get older, what I think they need versus what they actually need, there's starting to be a greater delta as they grow older and have their own relationships with people, their own interests, and their own emotional needs as they grow older. That when they start to grow up the language and have the language to actually express what they need, I really need to be listening, not dictating at them. And also, motherhood with toddlers has taught me a whole lot about tolerating rejection and negotiating kind of hostile environments. So, truly, I think motherhood is the greatest flex of leadership that there ever could be, is certainly for me.
Thank you so much for tying those two things because sometimes it can feel like they, like one would be really hard because of the other, but for you to really just embody that and show up as that is the path of possibility that I just needed to see. I listened to a lot of podcasts with CEOs who are moms, and they're talking about business, but just knowing that they are embodying that has been really special. And we don't oftentimes hear about the lessons that sort of translate. So this was really, really meaningful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would love to dive into the rapid fire questions. Are you
Yes.
ready?
Yes.
Okay. What does wellness mean to you today?
Free time, unscheduled time. That's what wellness means to me today.
Love. What does leadership mean to you today?
Listening.
Mm. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't covered, but you think would be really meaningful to talk about?
Something I wish I did in my 20s, especially, is to have established a much better self-care, especially in the taking care of myself side of things. When I had the space and fewer commitments to other people to develop rituals and routines to help me stay grounded and help me stay well. I wish I really did prioritize working out regularly and finding the workouts that I enjoy doing at a much younger age. I regret not using the time I had back then to set up a better meal prep and like get into that, build that routine and build that habit more. I wish I slept a lot more. I wish I slept so much more. And I wish I had been more proactive about saving and financial management than I was. I was never in dire straits, but I could have saved more. And I could have had, I think, a better foundation for that than kind of been reactive and having to learn. Honestly, my husband taught me a lot about that. And for that, I'm very grateful for him. But I wish I had been a little bit more proactive about it. And, but I'm also so glad that I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. So now there really is no sense of FOMO anymore. Like I'm so grateful for that chapter where I was going to the club and going out dancing and having the long brunches with friends and traveling. And now I still enjoy the traveling part of things. I do enjoy dinners with friends. I do enjoy the occasional going out dancing, but I also absolutely love like and being in bed. Like last night, I was in bed by 9 o'clock, full skincare done, in a cozy pair of pajamas, rereading one of my favorite books because that's what my brain needs right now, and fully asleep by like 10:15. And it was wonderful. So yes, as much as I said, I wish I had done these things in the past, I'm also grateful for the 20s that I had, for the 30s that I had, because my 40-year-old self is living her best life with zero regrets.
Yay. How can the audience members best reach you, follow you, and continue to learn from you? I know I'll be linking all of your offerings in the show notes, but is there anything else that you'd like to share about?
Sure. I would say my Substack is probably the best way to regularly connect and hear
Mhm.
from me, and that's where I feel my best work is right now.
Mhm.
Followed by, listen, I'm vibing on Instagram, I'm vibing on Threads, but there are going to be times where I don't post anything for weeks at a time because that's what I need in that moment. So I think I'm a little bit more consistent with Substack. You can certainly check out my books. We're Speaking, as much as a book about a political figure, it is not really a political book, and it really ties in biography with personal development and very tactical tools, both professionally and personally. So I highly, highly recommend that book. And if you'd like to do a one-on-one mentoring session with me, I offer those via The North, a
Mm.
platform by Female Founders Collective. So if there's anything you'd like to chat with me further about, I would love to chat with you.
Yay. Well, it has just been such a gift to speak to you and to hear from you. And I just know everyone listening will have so many takeaways and beautiful nuggets. And we're all so grateful.
Thank you. And it's a testament to you for just such a wonderful conversation and wonderful, wonderful questions. I'm
Mm.
very grateful for the time we had together and the conversation we had.
Thank you.